The intro had so much potential. The clips together was actually good. And you sold it as like, welcome to what's going to be a piece of shit. I hope you don't mind our piece of shit. And you
I know.
sold it as hot garbage.
That's the plan.
That's not the plan, though, because somebody listening to that goes, all right, I'm out.
It's supposed to be a hidden gem for only
I,
our hardcore listeners.
I, I don't think you accomplished that. But yeah, not to mention what was the other thing? Oh yeah, I got damage claims coming out my wazoo right now, which is fucking phenomenal. I just
We'll
paid
get
20.
into those. We'll get into those.
Okay.
Hey everyone, I'm Brad from Calgary.
This is Sean from Cambridge, Ontario.
I'm Terry from Cornwall, Ontario.
Hey, this is Larry from Pitt Meadows, British Columbia, and you're listening to the Towing Life Podcast.
Welcome to the Towing Life Podcast, where the ditches are deep, the trucks are loaded, but the drivers are not. I am your host, Towman G, and as usual, I am joined by my co-host, friend, and former co-worker, the man with very strong opinions, Mr. Plain Guy.
What is going on, G? What is going on?
I think I need to take, as usual, out of this intro spiel that I do because the podcasts have seemed to be all over the place as of late.
No, that's not true at all. As usual, out of 143, 5, I don't even know, 43, 4 episodes, we've had like 3 or 4 weird ones. I would say as usual continues to stand. So yes, as usual, the towing industry was a very busy happening place last week between that and
you were golfing.
Okay, and between that and taking personal time, I was saying, it led to us unfortunately able to sit down and have a proper recording session to be able to get an episode out. So G took the time out of his day, which we appreciate greatly. I think I speak for our whole listenership when I say this, to put together a highlight reel of clips never before seen. I was scared when you sent it to me because we definitely talk about things off the record prior to starting the show. Sometimes the camera is rolling. And I don't always have the decency to say, as I did before we recorded this one, do not put that in an episode. So when you told me you were putting together some clips and you sent it, it was too late to do anything about it. However, I was worried. But that being said, I think we bury a lot of content that our listeners don't get to see or hear. And you did a fine job bringing up some of the did you already have that like saved?
No, so what I do is when I edit things, especially if it's like the intro, I will cut that clip and I'll render it as a separate MP4 file. Sometimes it's edited, sometimes it's not, and I'll just put it in a clips folder that I have. And as the name, I put down the episode number and normally some very bad spelling of kind of roughly what it's talking about.
I've noticed that.
Quick and just what I was doing. And so then I was just going through and I can't remember because we've done a clips episode before and I couldn't remember which ones I've included or not. I really should delete them after I'm done with them, but whatever.
Yeah, of course.
And so when I did the intro of that video, I said it should be about 35 minutes. But after I went into it and actually started watching it after I had it all set up in the timeline, I was like, that one's a little too off colored. Remove that one. And that one had producer Sarah in it, and we've already had that one in a clips episode, so I'll remove that one as well. So it got it down to 25 minutes, but it was we talked about a lot of colorful things. So if you haven't watched that one because of my piss poor intro, I always like to talk down our stuff so it's a hidden gem, but here it is.
I think secretly you have self-confidence issues, and that's the main reason why you talk down most of our episodes.
Big time.
G never thought when the show would get started that it would ever be at 144 episodes. And
no, I thought we'd be lucky if we had like 5 to 10 listeners, viewers every episode.
And generate ad revenue throughout it and different things like that. So, yes, if you ever hear G doing an intro by himself, please do not tune out of the episode. I assure you there's probably good content behind it if you can get through the first 40 seconds of his ramblings.
Yeah.
Because he repeated pretty much the same thing over and over again. And just when I kept yelling at the screen to say, start the episode already, he went on again, apologizing for how terrible it was going to be. So that being said, that is not a problem tonight. We are together. We are in person. We are recording episode 144 of the Towing Life podcast. Don't forget your questions, comments, concerns, all that good stuff is important to us. You can easily get a hold of us in multiple different ways. You can visit us at www.towinglife.ca. You can email us directly at thetowinglife@gmail.com, or you can find us on Facebook at the Towing Life Podcast. Don't forget, if you're watching over on the YouTube side, you can also click down below, comment down below, subscribe up in the top right corner, or left, or right, or bottom left,
Bottom
or
right,
wherever
left.
they put the button now.
Bottom left.
Do not forget to subscribe and hit the little bell to get notified when we release new content, which tends to be every Tuesday of every week, which is a small task on its own, as we know, with how busy the towing industry can be. And you're right, G, when I go golfing, I haven't taken a golf trip. I take one a year.
Yeah.
One a year, and your schedule couldn't accommodate it. We had one night that we were supposed to.
You didn't let me know ahead of time.
I did. I told you the night that we were supposed to record one night.
Yeah.
And you all I'm like, can you go a little later? And you're like, nah, I don't know what you had. And I can't remember. I got called out to a job. I think it was the roller that had rolled over.
Yeah.
And I got called out to a job, and you couldn't do after. And then I believe I told you because I'm going away on a golfing trip this weekend. And then you messaged me on Saturday, and I said, I'm away on a golfing trip. And then you messaged me on Sunday. I said, I'm away on a golfing trip.
No, you just said you're away golfing. You didn't say trip.
No,
but I didn't know when you were returning. But no, we had it scheduled for 6:30, and you're like, "Can you do later?" I said no, and then later on, you said, "Well, I'm going out on this job." So I was like, "Well, I get up at 4:30 a.m., so I got to go to bed."
I gave you fair notice.
Yeah,
I try my best to give you fair notice if it's going to happen. G and I have he reminds me of my wife in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. He words things to the way that will benefit him in the argument. And he leaves out information that was given to him in order to sound better in said argument.
I just forget. I have a horrible memory. Absolutely horrible memory.
And like my wife, he uses that argument. Actually, that's the argument I use.
I want to tell my story about a damage claim, so let's get started with this Ford video that you got.
Okay, perfect. Let's get on to the real towing topics.
Yes.
So it was brought to my attention. I got a phone call tonight. I was on my way back from dinner with my wife. Mm-hmm. And I got a phone call, and they said, hey, have you heard about Ford's new active air dam? It's also called like an active spoiler, like an active front spoiler. And I said, no, I've never heard of this. I've heard of, especially the Eco Boosts. I think they had it a lot, where in the grill it would open and close to shutters. Allow airflow.
Yep.
Yeah. Like shutters. That's what I thought he was referring to, because he's slightly French. Sometimes he loses things in translation. That was not at all the case. This camera is going to drive me bonkers. That doesn't want to stay still. So I did a little research. Said, hey, I heard about it on Tow Talk, which is a social media group where we've pulled a lot of information over the years for our episodes. About this thing, and I think it's worth looking into and having a talk with the operators.
Yep.
So I wanted to bring everyone here the opportunity to see the same video. So it does come from TikTok. The way I used to download the video, it unfortunately removed the the name off of it. But it is Tow Truck Tech over on TikTok. So I'll let the video play, let you guys hear and see for yourselves. And we'll have a talk about damage claims and how to avoid them with this system.
There is a $1,200 monster on the front of these new F-150s, 21 and newer, that is waiting to haunt wrecker operators. Ford has done is they put an active spoiler on this vehicle. There's a set of actuators that runs the spoiler up and down. And where you're going to come into trouble is where you have a hard contact on the front of the vehicle like this. I've priced out the parts. It's like 600 parts, and there's 600 in labor to fix it. And the actuators are very well known for premature failure. So you could have a vehicle that you handle that you did not mishandle, and the customer claims that you have damaged the actuators and the spoiler when it should actually be a warranty item. And I cannot state this enough. Document everything and how you handle these vehicles. Once this vehicle's on the deck, take photographs of all four corners. You can see you've got good clearance there, so there's no question what's going on. You can see we're 8-pointed, so there's no question on how the vehicle's retained. Because the last thing you want, especially on an F-150 like this, is some $1,200 demon creeping up and punching you in the face later on, and you cannot document anything on how the vehicle was handled.
So that is some very interesting piece of information. I am going to name this the Texas Snowplow. Because this is also the stupidest goddamn design I've ever seen from Ford. And Ford's done a lot of stupid stuff over the years, let's be honest.
Like it's a 6,000-pound truck that's got a squarish front end. What's this little spoiler air dam going to do for your fuel economy?
Apparently, it increases 4% aerodynamics of the vehicle. And
Ooh.
but in a world where everyone's fighting over fuel mileage
Yeah.
and increasing it to the maximum, I can see how they're trying to take every option. What I'm
Yep.
saying is, I've got to check because my father has one of these trucks, and I'm
Mhm.
willing to bet that guy does not know he has this on there.
Mhm.
I called him earlier. He didn't answer. I wanted to confirm because if he does, I want to go look at it.
My old manager has one too.
Yeah, I bet you. See if they know about this thing.
Yep.
So, like 20, it's on model years 21 and up. It's excluded on like the Tremor and the
Yep.
Raptor, which makes
Mhm.
sense. But it doesn't need any, by the sounds of it, any sort of fancy trim line.
Hmm.
It's XLTs, it's pretty standard on them. And like they
Yep.
said, the actuators on it are already prone to failure.
Mhm.
And visibly looking at it, I watched a couple other videos. You don't see it
No, it's
unless you go
behind the
looking
little
for it.
rubber
It's
valence there.
behind and 100%. I've used a winch and I've seen that little rubber piece
Bend up.
fold up. I'm pretty
Yep.
sure I've chained down a Ford. I don't know if it's on the F-250s, but I've changed down like 250s where I bend up the rubber thing on the corners where my chain's running.
Mhm.
Like this is something that it's the first I've heard of it. And I've been towing for a while, as we all know. And there's a lot of operators out there.
Mhm.
Even the person who sent this to me has been towing for a while, never seen it.
Mhm.
Right. I've never seen this. Is this something you have seen? Be sure to send us a message, comment down on the YouTube, or send us an email at thetowinglife@gmail.com. Like, have you seen this Ford active air dam or active spoiler, whatever you want to call it, on the bottom of the 21 and ups? And why is Ford not getting this information out to, like, we almost need a centralized training. Oh, wait,
Mhm.
we're bringing one to Ontario that will not cover any of this.
No.
But you know what I mean? Like a bulletin out to towing providers somehow to go, hey, new model years, kind of like they did with electric, right? Electric is in a big
Mhm.
push for that. Hey, we don't want you guys to pooch these cars. Here's how you have to tow them, right? The Ford Mach-E is a great example,
Mhm.
right? There was a bunch of information put up that I believe they have like 2 slots underneath them. Do not use them.
Yeah, they're the battery slots for the mounting of the battery, and if you hook them
Yeah.
up, it pulls out the hole underneath of the car.
Yeah. Right. But there was at least a little, but even that, we didn't get that from Ford.
No,
We got that from like ESA or some electric safety standard.
because
Right? Like
some
how is
dumb tow truck driver did it and screwed it up, and he was like, "Oh no, posted all over social media. Don't do this because
pretty
I
much
fucked
like
it up."
we have to learn about these things,
Mhm.
right? And again, we've hooked up many vehicles. Now a truck, I normally don't go A-arms on them. You normally go in transmission mount, right? Or
Mhm.
transmission cross member because you need the room on the winch.
Mhm.
Somebody posted in the comments of that video, oh, why don't you just use the tow hooks on the front?
Hmm.
Okay, first of all, tow hook
I don't
loading
know
isn't
if you're driving a 30-foot deck, but or
no,
never winched up a truck before, but it just doesn't fit if you got like a
exactly.
4-foot or 3-foot chain bridle, even a strap bridle. You just
And
not
if
gonna
you
have the room.
lower that bridle into, if you shorten the shit of that bridle, the veer angle alone of it
Mhm.
is not great. So there obviously needs to be a tool, maybe put in place, which
Mhm.
to help these things. But you're right, you'll run out of deck.
Yeah.
Like even on a 21-foot platform, you'll run out of deck. And if you don't, you're pulling down on the whole front end of the damn thing by the time it
Mhm.
gets up to the winch. Like it's not practical. So you go underneath, but no one tells us about this. Like no one gives us this information. This is completely left onto the towing industry to know better. And unless you flipped a Ford upside down onto its side and got a good look at this thing and went, oh shit, that's how it works.
Yeah.
A memo from Ford might not be a bad place to start, especially since these things have been out for 4 years.
Yeah. Now, this is leading into my story here, but when we worked at a company together, you found a thing in the Chevy's owner manuals, like the old cat eye Chevs, early 2000s, to where it says in the owner's manual, if you press the 2 high and 4 low together for 10 seconds, it neutralizes the transfer case and you can tow it with the rear tires on the ground.
With the truck in neutral and on the newer models with the parking brake engage, yes.
No, with the
The
transmission in
turn
park.
dial one needed no, it was transmission neutral. Transmission neutral, the 2 lines on an old Chevy Cat Eye, you could see two lines that would go to an N. If you held those two buttons with the key power on and the transmission in neutral, that N would light up after about 15 seconds. You put the transmission back in park. You could tow them by the front with the rear tires on the ground, as per
No, I'm
GM.
talking about the older ones with the push buttons on the left-hand side. But
That's what I'm
anyways,
talking
yeah,
about.
no, if you can put the transmission in park and it's perfectly fine.
I always did it from neutral.
I'm a firm believer if you're neutralizing any transfer case, if you cannot put the transmission into park, don't do it.
Mhm.
Because if the transmission is in park, then you know that the power's not getting to the transmission. Anyways.
Yes, you'll know. I want to reiterate that because it's an important fact. If you put the transmission in park and it doesn't roll, it means the transfer case was never disengaged. If you leave the transmission in neutral, you are unsure if the transmission is in neutral, if it's that's causing it to roll, or if it's the transfer case that has been disengaged. Therefore, putting it in park eliminates that, especially since Chevy and GM's had a notorious problem with electric four-wheel drive actuators not actually working. So it would tell you neutral, but it was actually still in 2 high, 4 high, whatever the case was.
Yeah. Now most of the Chevys, the front hubs spin freely. You can tow them with the front tires on the ground as long as it's in 2-wheel drive, anyways, and you're good to go down the road. Now, with the company I worked with, we towed a lot of trucks with the front tires on the ground, and we never had an issue, not once. And this story,
and you're talking
isn't
about the company we worked with together, because I never
No.
towed with front wheels on the ground.
No.
Okay.
Company I previously worked for, we towed pretty much every truck out on the market with the front tires on the ground.
Okay.
When the company we did work for together, we did get a notice from Ford, or one of us found this notice from Ford of how to tow their new trucks, because it was the newer body style in like 2016, 2018 with the turn dial and automatic 4-wheel drive. And I remember that document because I saved that document and I shared it to other operators, because the trucks with the automatic 4-wheel drive, you had to neutralize the transfer case and tow it with the rear tires on the ground.
Right.
But if it didn't have the auto 4-wheel drive, you could tow it with the rear tires in the air, front tires on the ground, and you're good to go rocking down the road. That's what Ford said in this letter.
So you claim you have no proof at this point?
No,
I want this disclaimer
I can
started off that
I
we are
can
not
find the
responsible.
document again.
I want to start this off by we are not responsible for any damage claims induced by
So
our stories of towing.
Don't follow any advice until you hear the end of the story. So I've towed many of newer aluminum body Ford F-150s following that metric in my head. If it's got the auto 4-wheel drive option, pick it up from the front, neutralize transfer case. A lot of times you can put the transmission in park. Sometimes you still have to leave it in neutral just because it's the stupid push button. If it had the turn key, you're able to put it in park and it'd be fine. Push button, you'd have to leave it in neutral because reasons, I guess. Anyways, and it worked fine every time until one day I went down and I was hooking this truck up and I was taking it to Toronto. I think it was like a 65-kilometer tow. And I got it out onto the road. I was about to hook it up from the rear. I went up and I looked. I was like, oh, it's got the auto 4-wheel drive. So I turned my tow truck around, backed up to the front, and I'm talking to the owner of the truck and showing him how to neutralize the transfer case and everything. I said, yeah, I got a document from Ford and I checked the years and it's all good to go. So I do it, and it's one of the push button ones to where you can't put the transmission in the park and you have to leave it in neutral. I didn't think much of it at the time. So I start going down the road. And as I'm going down the road,
how far did you make it?
I made it 50 kilometers.
Ooh, okay.
And I felt the weird bump. I was like, oh, that's weird. And I just had a weird feeling like I couldn't see anything in my mirrors. The truck was still rolling just fine. Didn't think much of it, but I was like, I'm just going to get off the highway and check. I pull off the highway and I pull into a parking lot and I get out, and don't I see a drive shaft laying on the ground?
Whoops.
From the rear end.
Whoops.
Yeah. I was like, ooh, that's not good.
Fun fact, that's the only drive shaft Tom G has ever removed in his career.
No. So, anyways, I call my manager, of course, because I was like, I just royally buggered up this guy's truck. And I crawl underneath and I try to move the drive shaft, and the drive shaft will not spin. So the transfer case, I guess, locked back up while going down the road because the front tires, the drive shaft wouldn't have spun in the first place because the front tires were locked. Like it locked up the front tires.
So what drive shaft did you had this thing picked
The
up by the
rear.
front?
Yeah, the rear drive shaft, it snapped right at the rear diff. But the transfer,
Snapped.
well, the U joint snapped. And I guess what happened, I'm not sure if it was the bump I hit on the highway jiggled something in the transfer case, or if the transfer case just said, you know what, I don't want to be in this position anymore, and locked up the front tires. Well, when you lock up the front tires and they're stationary and the wheel lift with straps on, and the
Power
rear tires are
energy
doing
going somewhere.
90,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Something's going to break.
Yeah.
Thankfully, the drive shaft broke at the rear, not the front, because then that would have dug into the road.
Well,
anyways,
I've never seen one dig in that sense, but it's an old
possibilities
wives' tale.
there, right?
Yeah.
Possibilities there. But if it also did break from the front, then it's also spinning around from the diff and causing even more damage.
It could, yes. That would be
Right.
more of the concern, yes. Is all the undercarriage that it's going to tear up.
Yeah. So here I am underneath this truck in a Go parking lot, and I peel off the drive shaft and throw it in the bed of the truck.
Like
It's like,
finish
well,
off it was still
Yeah.
into the front.
Yeah, it was still into the front yoke, so I did the 4
Ah.
bolts and I pulled it off and I threw it in the bed of the truck. And of course, I'm towing it to a shop I've never dealt with before. I've never
Even
dropped
better.
there before. So when I get there, I drop the truck off. I go in, I talk to the mechanic. I wait till he's off the phone. I told him this is what's going on. It was here because it was leaking engine oil or whatever.
It's leaking tranny diff.
No, it wasn't
Maybe
leaking any of that. And I told him exactly what happened. And I said, I've got the document. And at that time, I was already on the phone. I pulled it back up on my phone and I showed him the document from Ford. And I was like, I honestly don't think I'm in the wrong here because I got a document with a Ford letterhead that says this is how you're supposed to tow it. But,
They're on you.
right? However,
Repair
it does
on.
state at the bottom of this document, not in that specific vehicle class, but at the bottom of the document, because whenever you look for a document and you're looking for information, once you find that information that you
Once you found what
want,
you're looking for,
yeah,
you
you
don't
just stop,
reading. Yeah,
right?
100%.
And it says at the bottom, after it lists all the how to tow every Ford possible, it says for a maximum of 50 kilometers and under 80 kilometers an hour.
You forgot to read the speed limits.
Yeah. So, anywho, I
And
say,
hold on,
okay,
I'm
well,
gonna guess you did over 80 kilometers an hour.
yeah, I was
100%.
100%. And at first, I was all giddy because it's like, oh, it's got one of those hard tonneau covers. Now I have to worry about that if I'm towing it backwards. And since it's got the auto 4-wheel drive, like I was excited. The guy even tipped me $20 for showing me all the or showing him all the. So after I drop it down and I talk to the guys, like, find out, like, you could still drive it around and like we moved it in the parking lot in 4-wheel drive with the front
Oh,
tires. So we
Jesus
knew
Christ.
so we knew that at least the transmission and transfer case is working, right? So
Then
and
you
I knew the rear end was
blew the
okay
front
because
end by trying to do that.
yeah, but I know the rear end's fine because it's spun all the way there. So I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm in for a drive shaft bare minimum. But then I'm probably also, I just hope I'm not into a transmission. I better not be into a transmission. Transfer case is probably going to be, we'll see, right? So I leave it at the shop, and the guy, the owner, is obviously upset. I call him in the parking lot, let him know what happened, and say that I'm going to take care of it. And he's upset, and he wants a rental vehicle.
Uh-huh.
So the company gets him a rental
I'm
vehicle,
entitled to.
right?
Yeah.
And this mechanic, I'm not sure how good of a job he normally does, but he dragged his heels on this job. So it was like 3 weeks before,
Ooh.
before he even told me that, no, I think the transfer case is a little fuckulated. I had a drive shaft custom made for that truck in 2 days. I went to a high end parts store that we've used for like drag or like pull trucks. I said, this is the drive shaft I need. These are the ends. Make it. I spent it was like $900 on this aluminum drive shaft that's like really strong. Just because finding a used one, I don't want to put used parts really because I don't
Yep.
know. Anyways, and Ford itself was back ordered for like 6 months. I knew I couldn't wait 6 months, so I'm going in for custom parts. And I get the drive shaft, and they're like, "Oh, well, this drive shaft, it'll work, but it's a little like apparently the one spline is just a little off, but it fits, but it's just." So it's like, okay, I'll take drive shaft back, I'll get it resplined. Like it was what it was. And then the mechanic's like, "No, I think we need a transfer case as well." It's like, all right, I've already had one on like placed on order at the Ford dealership. If I needed to back out, it was fine. So then I got a new transfer case to show up. And he puts that in. Well, when he puts the new transfer case in, the drive shaft that was now custom made twice for the transfer case that was in there no longer fits into the new T case. So then they go out and buy another used drive shaft out of a junkyard, and this custom made drive shaft that I got for the truck that fit in the truck is just sitting somewhere. I have no idea where it is at this point, collecting dust. Hopefully someone was able to resell it because I know I didn't.
What was the total claim?
I don't even know anymore, to be honest with you. It had to be the transfer case was 16, the drive shaft was 9 that I paid out of pocket, so it didn't even go through the company first. Plus the rental vehicle. I think he was in a rental for at least 2 weeks.
Yeah, you're probably looking at close to $5,000 when you're all said and
Yeah.
done, plus labor
Yeah.
and everything. Right? Fun fact. You gotta always read the fine print. Fun fact: I did pay for a drive shaft on a GM once as well, but mine was for a completely different reason. It was a 2500 broken down on the highway. I called my dispatch. Said, "What's the problem with the truck?" She said, "It won't start. Died, won't start. No problem. Neutral transfer case. Pick it from the front. Take off.
Yep.
Get to the shop. Guy sees the back wheels on the ground. He goes, "What the hell are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, you can neutral the transfer case. It's fine. Like I wouldn't have done any damage." He goes, "No, the problem was one of the rear U joints."
Oh.
I said, "What?"
Huh.
Well, sure enough, we crawled underneath, and yeah, one of the U joints had let go. One of the end caps had fallen off, and the U joint actually, while spinning around going down the road, reamed out the hole on the drive shaft
Oh.
to make the drive shaft unusable.
Yeah.
So, 500, 600 bucks later on a used drive shaft at the scrapyard, because it was like GM. You've ever seen their brake configurations? There's 8 different variations. Finally found one as 2 hours away. Went and got it, gave it to the guy. Like, luckily didn't need a rental or any of that kind of stuff, but it was just one of those. It was a miscommunication from dispatch. Sure enough, when I told dispatch about it, she's like, "Oh yeah, he said something about a U joint." And I was like, "Yeah, that was very valuable information that could have saved me a lot of time and money." So no, it's, you know what, damage claims are part of it, right? I've been a big believer of that. I've always said, if you haven't broken something, you haven't been doing it long enough, or you're full of shit. I still stand by that today. I've got a couple active. Just one was dumb.
Yeah.
I got 2 on the go right now. One just closed. It was a couple $1,000s, and it was just stupidity. It was winching off a cube truck in a parking lot at a dealership. Not paying attention when he turned a little bit at the end to get it off the bed, backing into a brand new sold car.
Ooh.
With the step bumper. That was just over $2,000.
Oh, so he's unloading the cube truck in the parking lot?
He was unloading the cube truck at the parking lot. I had a brand new parked car that had been sold.
I think that's one of the most prevalent damage claims is unloading.
Loading
and
into
cars
something.
rolling into something, yeah.
Yeah, so that was one. It was, again, good relations. This is where business comes into it. How do you handle those damage claims? They're going to happen. It's all about how you handle them. Right? I called the dealership up as soon as I got the call. I said, "Hey, look, I heard what happened. This is something that we're definitely going to take care of for you. Who's your body shop, and do you need me to bring it there?"
Yep.
They said, "We use, ABC Automotive or Auto Body, and no, we'll get it over there." Okay, no problem. I'll call him up, let him know to send me the bill.
Yep.
Right? Called him up. "Hey, you got a car coming from the dealership. This is the car. This is the damage. Try and be easy on me. He's not a body shop I regularly use. He's not one of my regular customers, but I know him." And I said, "Look, I'm going to come good for it. I'll write you a check for whatever the balance is. Just get this car fixed for them and get it taken care of." I call back the dealership. I said, "Hey, I've already spoken with him. We're going to take care of the bill. No problem. He'll try and bump it up. Hey, appreciate how you're taking care of this." Now, I mean, that's the right way to take care of it.
Yep.
As for the driver, there's consequences and then we have to deal with, right?
Mm-hmm.
My other one is a training issue. New operator,
Mm.
can't blame him. This guy, given a current situation, maybe got thrown into something that he shouldn't have got thrown into quite yet. He's a great operator. He operates heavies and lights.
Mm-hmm.
He was wheel lifting a Mercedes Sprinter camper van. He disconnected the drive shaft. He did everything right. So we run NRC beds. Anyone that knows that, we don't run the Vulcan. So we run a strap on the tires.
Yep.
Unfortunately, I carry 2 different sets of straps for that wheel lift. There is the set that NRC give you, which are about 2-inch or 3-inch straps.
Yep.
With the hook on, they're great. And then we also, a lot of times I'll run, if it's just small little stuff, those little blue ones we talked
Yeah,
about.
the motorcycle dolly straps. Yep.
Yeah, well, they're not motorcycle, they're dolly straps. Yeah.
Yep.
So on the smaller car as well, a little bit of training or lack thereof, he put those on this thing.
Mm.
And because we run a strapless system, you do not require to run your safety chains to the wheel lift. You can tie directly to the casualty. So he did. He went up over the wheel lift, tied to the wheel lift, or tied to the casualty and let the chains hang. Well, on a highway, he had to emergency brake. When he emergency braked, those chains weren't going to stop because they weren't tied off to the wheel lift, which they don't have to be. Those straps should hold if you use the big ones.
Yeah, the ones that are rated for
the vehicle that you're towing. Yes.
Yeah.
The little ones are not. They are rated for the smaller little cars. They're not rated for a full-size camper conversion. Vehicle came forward. As you know, you tow them on the wheel lift of a bed. It was on a bed. Fairly tight, so any little forward travel puts that thing right into the lip of your bed if you bring it in far enough, and which he did. That was one of the few things he did very well, and that is he would have been perfect to make corners. So luckily, again, it wasn't a catastrophic failure. The safety chains were still attached. There was nothing that came off the vehicle. There was nothing, it was the best of a bad scenario. But yeah, damage claims happen, and that one I haven't even started the process on that. It's still at the garage getting the original repair for what it was, and it's at a Mercedes garage.
Ouch.
So they happen, right?
Yeah.
They happen, and what we can do from it is learn. And like I would be the first to say, if I got a damage claim off something like that of the Ford on something I knew nothing about, that's 100% on. You can't blame an operator for that one. Like you put the responsibility in the operator that he is supposed to take care of whatever vehicle he's towing. He's supposed to be checking for, I can't teach you how to tow every car or which cars are going to have wiring that you got to look out for, or possible brake lines on a diff or fuel lines or any of that stuff, ABS wires. And if you are right in a damage claim, which I've had recently with a customer, which is a whole other cluster, then I will fight and fight and fight to, like we had a customer that claimed that we ripped off an ABS wire on his Mercedes or BMW. This is a wild one. The ABS wire comes in from the top of the strut tower and down. The tow truck said it looks like it got pulled with a hook, or the garage. There's no way. Maybe a tire strap. But even that, I look like where it's mounted, it doesn't make sense.
Yep.
We did not pull that with a J hook. This vehicle was in for a 14-day stun drive. After he picked it up, the ABS light was on. He claims it wasn't on prior. Claims.
Yep.
Brought it to a dealership, blamed it on us. The crazy part about this is he filed a chargeback on his credit card that he paid with in person for the impound bill. And the credit card company approved it.
What?
So it goes through waves. Even if you ever dealt with chargebacks, it gets charged back, then you got to prove your point, then they make a decision, and there's like 3 rounds of this it can go through. And at the last, I'm pretty sure the first one we lost, the second one we won, the third one we lost because they said we didn't submit documents, even though they told anyways. But he went and actually has managed to get out of paying his 14-day impound at this point. Because he charged back his credit card saying, and like, which are 2 separate matters.
Yeah.
If you truly believe that we did your damage, that does not constitute that you get out of a police ordered tow.
No.
That becomes a civil matter. The charge back, like the pair on this guy, you guys must be related. Because the pair on this guy to go, I'm going to call my credit card company and say that I didn't authorize that charge. It was for your car.
Yeah.
You paid in person with a card.
Yeah.
Like physically put the thing in the machine.
Yeah.
I thought that was supposed to protect us.
But for the ABS light, like just before I got out of the industry, since we had indoor storage where I was working, we were taking pictures of all four corners, obviously, outside in the light. And then when you drive it into the actual yard and put it on a hoist, you take more pictures. But for my own personal recollection, you're supposed to write down how much fuel is in the vehicle and the kilometers, because some people like to say, oh, well, they took my car for a joyride.
I don't
Right?
need to do that. I got full video surveillance.
I know. We do too, but it's like just you write it on the bill how much fuel was in it because they see that it's indoor storage and we drive it around to them when they come to pick it up, right? Try to red carpet service. Thanks for paying your
See,
bill.
we
Here's
don't
your
do
car,
that, so screw
right?
that. Yeah.
So, and with that picture, it would show what lights are on in the dash because it's running at that time before you're taking it in. We had a car, and it was a shitty little Pontiac Pursuit. I think it was a Cobalt knockoff for Pontiac,
Mhm.
and it was in for a 45 day. And I was the one that picked it up in the wheel lift, and I was like, "Oh, we're gonna get stuck with this thing. Like they're not gonna come pick it up.
Yeah.
Should I double pick it? Yeah, I'll double pick it. Whatever.
Yeah, they
I
were
double
bad for
picked
oil pans. Yeah.
it, right? I'll double pick it. I know they're low. I got a fat wheel lift. I double picked it, parked it in my shop. It sat there for 60 days before this guy came and paid the bill to get it out. He got it towed across the street for whatever reason because he couldn't drive. And when it wasn't by us, it was by a different company. And when it was dropped across the street, there was a puddle of oil underneath of it.
And he's definitely blaming you for that.
He's blaming us for it. And we said, you can come into our shop and see exactly where your car was parked.
Mm-hmm.
For 60 days. It did move because we knew it was going to be there for 60 days, so we shoved it in a corner.
Mm-hmm.
No one touched it. We had to boost it to get it started because it hasn't been moved. There's no oil there. And you can see, like on our surveillance camera, we weren't messing around with it.
Yeah.
So it's people will try to say whatever they can to get money out of you.
100%.
But
People
what
will
I'm kind of
absolutely try
worried
and scrape.
about these air dams on these Ford F-150s.
Mhm.
So going back to what I was saying earlier, most of those Fords you can pick up from the rear and the front tires just spin. Like we've
Mhm.
towed hundreds of them, never had an issue.
I do
right?
not endorse this Towman G mentality.
No, like anything, call it
Nope.
satire, if you will.
Nope.
Anyways,
Don't
what
endorse.
happens if you are, like you would set up your clearance, your ride height in the rear, so you lower the ass end of the truck down a little bit on your wheel lift to make sure you have that ground clearance. What happens if the speed sensor in the front realizes that it's doing 50 mile an hour and
In
decides
reverse?
to put that air dam down because it's got an electrical issue and that's why you're towing it, right? It's got a little demon hiding in the PCM module there, ECM module, because that's what new vehicles are famous for, having little demons doing weird things. Like in my
Fair.
Ram, the lights
Fair.
in the dash will just randomly flash sometimes, just out of the blue. What happens if that air dam goes down in reverse while you're towing it? And it
That
gets
air
ripped
dam
off.
just no longer exists.
Yeah.
I've actually
Bye-bye.
seen, when I was trying to do some research on it, I seen posts about it where
Mhm.
people were, because like Ford was a long delay to get parts on it, and
Mhm.
and one guy was like, I don't have one anymore. I didn't even know. I hit a tire debris in the road,
Mm,
and it must have broken it off. People don't even know about this thing.
no.
Like, I'm willing to bet if I call my dad and ask him what year his truck is, and I'm pretty sure it's newer than a 21. I think it's a 22 or 23. And go,
Mhm.
do you know about your active air dam? He's gonna go, my what?
Hmm.
Like most customers and most people probably don't even know this exists,
Yeah.
right? Like it's one of those weird little things that, and because again, you don't see it. And if
Yeah.
you're anyone like my dad who just buys the truck and knows nothing, like he comes around, I gotta show him how everything on the damn thing, right?
It tells me when I need an oil change.
Yeah, no, he's
No.
a little more mechanically
Yeah.
inclined than that. I actually
But a
finally
lot of
just
people
did,
aren't.
but it's true. Like even mine, like my truck that I've picked up is e-torque. Dodge with the e-torque. I kind of had an idea what the e-torque was. Never really did any homework on it.
Mm-hmm.
I actually started doing research and I was like, oh shit. Like there's it, mainly because I'm having problems.
Mm.
typical Dodge.
Yep.
But a lot of people, until they have problems with something, won't actually look into something, right?
Yep.
And because this doesn't affect any of the powertrain modules, so like this thing getting ripped off won't throw an air code. It will throw an air code, but it won't throw an engine light.
Mm.
Right? So it'll say that there's a problem with it, but it won't throw an engine light. So it's only if you
You
happen to
won't know
scan
what
it.
it's for. Yeah.
No, 100%. Well, again, the light won't come on. You probably go scan it for something else going on and then find out that there's a fault code for, an air dam actuator. And you're like, huh? What's that?
Yeah.
So
is that
no,
a part of my like AC? Is the heater core not opening? But that's the problem. If we're all trying to be professional in this industry, and with so many different makes and models of cars, it's impossible to know everything to do for every new car.
Yeah, so your operators have to be trained to literally do, and it's an important thing to do. And I'm not trying to shit on, because there's probably people that train, much better maybe than I do, or much better even than our company does, or that are just, keyboard warriors that'll sit there and go, well, you got to teach them all this stuff. And it's like, oh, what? There's so much out there to learn. You need to train your operators on how to look for it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yes. Okay. In a perfect world, they're walking around the full car. They're crawling underneath. They're documenting everything. Then they're loading up the car. And the fact of the matter is they're doing 4 calls a day.
Yeah.
Right? Or in the real world where you've done one where you go, okay, hey, I've done these Fords before. No problem. Hook, go. No problem.
Yeah.
Right? Until you find out that actually has that air dam and you're paying $1,200, give or take, that it comes out. So,
no, but I was trying to segue perfectly into professionalism.
I got it right here. So if you want to do damage-free towing and you never want to cause damage, we have some great news from the OPP. In a recent post that the Ontario Provincial Police put out about a towing company. And you'll ask me, gee, wait, is that a towing company? Because that doesn't look like a tow truck.
That's a funny looking rotator.
Ontario Provincial Police East Regions in Center Hastings. Some great work by Smokey's Towing after a single vehicle crash on Highway 62 in Center Hastings. It happened on June 28th when the driver swerved to avoid a deer. The car went over the guardrail and plunged 30 feet, 9 meters, onto the rocks in the ditch. Thankfully, there were no injuries. It took a skilled tow operator just 10 minutes to get the vehicle back on the road without any further damage or road closure.
What do you mean road closure? That truck's blocking the whole stinking road.
Yeah, only for 10 minutes. Technically, he left the lane open by the looks of it.
Yeah.
The OPP. Now, here's looking at you, OPP.
You said I had cojones before. The OPP's got balls for posting this.
No, the OPP are stupid for posting this. And the reason I say that, and as we'll go on to read it, one comment from the post. No disrespect in the world to Smokies.
No.
Okay? Smokies had this equipment at their disposal. They went ahead and did it. My problem with this post is this. The only Ontario Provincial Police postings you will find about tow trucks are how many tow trucks they took out of service, how many tow trucks have been shot at this month, how many tow trucks, got caught racing and stunt driving to scenes that they've impounded. Now you finally take the time to give a towing company credit for something on something that isn't even a goddamn tow truck.
Yeah.
Like
for those of you audio listeners out there, it's a logging truck with a crane.
Yeah.
It's a tandem axle logging truck with a log grab on the tailboard, and it's got the car grabbed in between the A pillar and the B pillar, crushing the roof in slightly, picking it up over top of the truck.
Over the guardrail, over top, loading it into a bin. It sounds like they may do scrap hauling in that. So like there's actually a tub on that log hauler if you look at it where the car can sit in.
Yep.
So it may be built with a purpose.
Yep.
But the fact of the matter is that is not a tow truck. That doesn't even fall under a tow truck under the OPP's new regulations.
And it says logging on the
hood. It says
hood.
logging right on the front of it. So my problem with this is, and I'll go on to read a comment that I think it's very funny and hits the nail pretty well on the head. This is adding insult to injury. What the fuck is wrong with the industry and the law enforcement we deal with here in Ontario? For people that follow the OPP social media accounts, we can all agree that very rarely does the OPP call out a towing company by name other than when it's making headlines for plates being removed or the tow truck being impounded for excessive speeding on the way to their first available request. But this has to be a joke. Congratulations, a goddamn logging truck. I think it's congratulations to a goddamn logging truck after all the shit this province has made the industry go through. What a joke. I kind of laughed at the no additional damage. The car was probably a write-off, but just shows the lack of knowledge and ignorance. If the car wasn't a write-off, sure is now. But hey, at least the logging truck did a great job. I know a lot of companies in Ontario that invest in the right equipment and training. Some of us have to help with extrication, and I've never seen a good job post on those. Regardless if all other emergency personnel were thanked for their assistance, but let's not forget the amazing work a logging truck that totaled what was left of a car that doesn't need a tow license or a tow driver because it's a goddamn logging truck. Don't mean any disrespect to Smokey's Towing. Some great work by Smokey's Towing after a single vehicle crash on Highway 62 in Center Hastings.
Yeah.
It's true. Like the Ontario Provincial Police has made an absolute joke of the industry as it is, right? From, the corruption behind the scenes, from, blasting every time a tow truck fails an inspection or gets impounded, right? If you haven't followed Ontario Provincial Police East Region and seen this post, last time I checked, it was still active. We were surprised. We thought it would come down after a bit. But like, you guys have already pooched this industry to hell. You have made us jump through hoops. Keep in mind, this was 3 days before all the regulations became official.
Yeah.
Right. And then you know what I mean? You congratulate. It's the first time we've ever seen one called out by first name.
Yeah.
Like by company name. And it's because of something like this. And it's embarrassing. It's goddamn embarrassing. Like, we don't go out here for the recognition by any stretch of the imagination. We have done recoveries where we have helped trap people inside vehicles. We have done, you know what I mean? Like, worked hand in hand with many first responders. And we do not expect the praise for it. That's fine. Right? As this poster goes on to say, even though every other emergency personnel that responded to something will get the recognition and the thank you. We, will go on humble without it. No problem. But when you see that kind of shit, it stings. It stings a lot. And whoever is in charge of their social media, and I'm sure they thought it's a funny post. Hey, this is pretty funny. Da-da-da-da-da. But it doesn't speak to the true issue going on within the towing industry, especially in such a crazy time in Ontario with everything going on. I think it was insensitive, and I think they fucked up. I think if it was meant to be funny, they missed the mark because it doesn't read funny. It reads stupid.
Maybe, just maybe, here in Ontario, we're going to see the industry start pivoting more towards these unconventional roles, solely for the fact that logging truck, like that poster says, doesn't need a tow license. Now, what if I get a roll-off truck with a flat deck? Well, that's not a tow truck. That's a roll-off truck. I wonder, I don't think I'll need a tow license for that because it's a roll-off truck, but I could haul cars with it. Probably won't need a tow license. Probably won't need to put a driver through $1,100 worth of training to operate that as long as they got their DZ.
People are going to argue it. People are going to play with it. People are going to find ways that they can to get around it. 100%. Right? I know one of the definitions is like having a wheel lift.
Yeah.
On a flatbed definitely makes it a tow truck. Doesn't make it just like a float truck.
But at the same point, that's going to screw a lot of people because I know a lot of equipment movers that haul medium-sized tractors love the 40 TB NRC beds because they're strong decks. A lot of them didn't remove the wheel lift. They just never use it because they need
because they use it as a stabilizer.
Yeah, they need it for the support. So now that's deemed a tow truck when that thing would never see a car in its life. And now
I wonder if it has to be registered to a towing company. Like, I don't know what the fine. I'd have to go over again and see what the fine. If it's not registered to a towing company, it shouldn't be a problem. And if it's registered to a towing company, right? But no, it's I don't know. We've talked about Dissemination enough. I really don't want to bore our listeners with it. It is a subject that definitely gets me a little hot and bothered in all the wrong ways. It is something that I think the province has completely continued to pooch, and hopefully we'll get it solved out, sooner than later before we start seeing logging trucks taking over recoveries in Northern Ontario. Like, there's operators that spent money on rotators and training to do exactly that.
But you could also say, What about a high ab crane on the back of like a lumber truck?
Yeah,
It's not a rotator. It's not a tow truck.
Yeah.
You could do
Oh,
most of the things a
no,
small
the
rotator
goddamn high ab guy unions will start arguing that it is and make us go through 7 years of certification to run one of those too. Like, like the crane guys did, which I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not. Again, we've touched the crane debate enough.
Yeah.
I think that that should be one of our goals, is to get a crane operator and a rotator operator on the show, and we're just going to go in the background and shut our cameras and mics off and go, here, boys, have a good talk about why is a rotator not a crane, and you can argue why it is.
That would be a good show.
That would be a good show. What side are you on, team rotator or team crane?
Team rotator, probably.
That's not fair. Then we're just going to beat up on this poor crane operator, and he'll never want to come back on our show again.
We'd never have him back on the show again.
That's fair. There's no purpose to have a crane operator. All they do is lift things up and put them down.
In the same plane.
So, as we kind of touched over in the episode, go get those logging trucks. If you're in Ontario, they are going to save you millions of dollars in licensing over the next year, and you can do the same recovery you can with a light-duty float without all the hassle. If you are towing Fords, please, for the love of God, you're 21 and up. So if it's legal to drink, go ahead and double check that it doesn't have the lowered air dam. Yep. If it does, maybe change up your approach. If you have a trick to how you tow these Fords that do have that dam, I think I got a couple ideas in my head, but until I actually get my hands on one to try it, I don't want to give them away. Comment down below over on the YouTube side. Do not forget to like and subscribe. Do not forget to visit the website or email us directly at thetowinglife@gmail.com. And do not forget to tune in again next week for another episode of the Towing Life podcast. Take care.
Toodles. For some reason, I wanted to say quack bang out at the end of that. He's another YouTuber, the fat electrician.
He says quack bang out.
Yeah.
You want to steal his line?
Yeah. It's a good line. It was just fitting. I don't know. It just went with the flow. I was like, oh, that would go good here.
You have a line. What is it? Toodles or some shit?
Toodles. Yeah.
Is that what you say every time?
Toodles. Yeah. 140 some odd episodes that I've been a part of.
You said toodles.
Toodles.
Oh my God.